All right. Hey everyone, and welcome to meetup number 145 of the Melbourne AWS user group. We start off these meetings in spirit of reconciliation. The Melbourne AWS user group would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and we would like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. The user group operates on a code of conduct. The slightly abbreviated version is up there. We have the full code of conduct is available on our website. The really short version is just be nice to each other. We're all here to learn, have a good time. If you are feeling uncomfortable about any aspect, please see myself, Matt, or Rob. Or on the website, there's also an anonymous form if you so desire. We are on a whole lot of the socials. We have our website. We have our LinkedIn presence. We are on Mastodon, not the website formerly known as Twitter. And we have YouTube, which if you're watching on YouTube, that one's fairly obvious. And this is the program for tonight. So I am currently doing the introductions. We'll then have What's New segment. And then we have a couple of talks. So we have Trent giving the first talk on Fargate, a bit of a deep dive there. And then afterwards, we'll have a few people out here giving a talk on giving a talk. So, you know, we'd like more people in the community to get up and have a talk, and we know that's not comfortable for a lot, but so we'll give you a few tips and hopefully some options to try and make that more comfortable for you, because without speakers, you know, these things are just a 10-minute what's new and then see you later. And then once we finish that, we have a marketplace section. So in there, we usually ask if anyone is hiring. They can put their hand up rather than people that are looking for work, because your boss may not be here, but if they happen to be watching live on YouTube, that may not be a pleasant conversation come Thursday morning. And then we'll close around about 8 o'clock. For anyone that's online, you can post questions in YouTube and on our Slack channel under the #Melbourne channel. So again, because people are watching, if you're in the audience and asking questions, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone around. We can't put these on without sponsors, and so we would like to thank our gold sponsor, Mantel Group, our silver sponsor, Sevo, and a special thanks to our venue sponsor, NAB. Without them, we wouldn't have a place to host this. So thanks very much to all of those. We mentioned about Slack earlier, so that's it there. If you go to that link, melb.awsug.org.au/Slack, and join up with our channel. We have quite a few channels there. So general, we have jobs. So if you're have a job, you're looking for people, you can post it there. Volunteers. Also, if there's any outages or issues with AWS, there's a #outages channel, and sort of behind my head, there's also a #announcements, which keeps track of what's new and what's coming on. If you want to get involved with the user group, there's a few different ways that we can do that. Speakers, always looking for speakers, as I said earlier, and hopefully our little talk on giving a talk might encourage a few more to come out. So yeah, without people speaking, these things get pretty boring. And look, you don't need to be super technical, super in-depth, someone that's spoken for ages. We encourage, all levels. So if you're just starting out, come speak. If you just want to do a lightning talk, we can try and get a couple, only speak for 10 minutes. So yes, please, if you've got a talk, you can go to the website. There's a sign-up form on there, so we would love to have you. Sponsors, if you would like to have your name up on the screen as part of our sponsors and help, go and speak to Matt. He would gladly take your company's money. And also too, if you would like to volunteer, there's also a volunteers channel on the Slack. We're always looking for help to do little bits and pieces. Again, this is a volunteer-run organisation. None of us on the committee actually work for AWS. So yeah, we're always looking for anyone that would like to help out. Now, we're not the only game in town, and we have a pretty good relationship with a whole lot of other user groups. But one of the big ones, in August this year, there is a community day being held in Brisbane. This is, again, similar to the user groups. It's going to be put on by volunteers, so by community members for the community. We'll get some assistance, but it's really being done by grassroots. So if you are planning to be in Brisbane in August, that'd be, or you would like to go for a holiday at a nice time of the year, keep your eyes out. There'll be, a whole lot more info will be coming up. And in the next 2 weeks, they're on LinkedIn now. No?
Yes. We are officially on LinkedIn now.
So
keep an eye out. We'll be starting to post stuff in sort of the first half of March.
Yep, so for anyone that might be online, have a look on LinkedIn for the Community Day Brisbane, so something like that. Community Day Australia 2025. So more info will be coming. And there's also a whole bunch of other user groups that are local. AWS Programming and Tools meetup, Wednesday 19th. So that one's actually looking fairly interesting. The Programming and Tools, that is a hands-on one. So you sign up, bring your laptops. So that's a lot of fun. serverless meetup, some more on EKS on Fargate. So that's at the start of March. All right, and then we'll bring out What's New section. Matt will come down and tell us all the new and shinies in the world of AWS.
Of which there aren't that many this month, but that's okay. There's still a little bit that we can talk about. Okay. As we do every month, we start off with the new shiny that's in Melbourne. EC2 capacity blocks for machine learning, because it wouldn't be a product announcement if it didn't have machine learning somewhere in the description or the title. So if you're the type of person who likes to do all the ML yourself and run it on EC2, yay, capacity blocks in Melbourne. The one that more people found a lot more exciting was that in Sydney we got Claude 3.5 Sonnet finally for Bedrock. Yay! And then they immediately came out and announced 3.7, and that's not in Sydney. But hey, yeah, we're Australia. We'll get it when version 4 comes out. Nothing else really happened in Sydney, so nothing really all that exciting. In the world of databases, CloudWatch Database Insights adds support for RDS databases. For those of you who are looking at me going, what the hell is CloudWatch Database Insights? It's CloudWatch. It's basically CloudWatch for your database server when you don't know what you need to monitor on your database server. So it is basically a whole bunch of predefined dashboards, alarms, alerts, and all these best practices that you should have set up in your database environment that you can push through automatically, and it integrates nicely into your existing CloudWatch dashboards, all these sorts of cool things. So it gives you a lot more insight, whereas previously, but in the same place as the rest of your operations information, which is kind of nice. Postgres got its monthly round of minor updates. Yay! So that means you've got to go back and update all of those again, unless you've got the little update minor version box ticked. And for those of you who have been sitting around with your OpenSearch serverless databases and going, man, I need to put more data in this, congratulations, you can now put 100 terabytes in there. Because OpenSearch serverless isn't expensive at all, and 100 terabytes of storage totally isn't going to send you broke. The takeaway on that one is you really want to be extracting a lot of value out of your data if you're throwing 100 terabytes into that. Yeah. Moving on to the world of containers. The big one here is Amazon ECS increases the CPU limit for ECS tasks to 192 vCPUs. Because much like you've been screaming for more storage space in OpenSearch serverless, a lot of people have been saying that 10 vCPUs is not enough for their ECS tasks. So they upped the limit from 10 to 192. So, you've always really wanted that ridiculously oversized container, because that's exactly what containers are designed for. Single instance monoliths as opposed to, microservices. Yeah, you can do that now. So, yeah. If that's your jam, go for it. I don't know how expensive it is, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not cheap. Code pipeline, native support for EKS deployment. That's kind of nice. The nifty thing about this one is that it supports deploying workloads to EKS clusters in private subnets as well. So it will actually open up a channel and deploy it for you without you having to manage and host your own Bastion host and all of those sorts of bits and pieces. Whereas previously you had to deploy your own host, had that as a sort of a cloud build agent and do it that way. This now just means you can set it up, add the connector into your code pipeline, and it will then automatically go and do all the smarts in the background to get that deployed. Yay! Just a nice easy way that you can go AWS service all the way into EKS. If you like AWS services that much, I would ask why aren't you using ECS, but that's a conversation for another day. In the machine learning world, because again, as I said before, wouldn't be a round of announcements if we didn't have some machine learning stuff in here. As I said before, Claude Sonnet 3.5 available in Bedrock in the US, because Yeah, 3.7, sorry. Available in the US. Yay. So, if you're doing workloads that isn't like geo-locked or anything, take a look. Apparently it's really good. I haven't had a chance to play with it. Q Developer got more love. It's been getting love like every month lately. The nice one here is, yay, they made Pro Tier subscriptions easier because they like making it easier to give them money. But the big one is Q Developer agents now run builds and tests to validate generated code in real time. Right here, this is the type of stuff that you want to go to the Programming and Tools meetup to take a look at. Some of the agentic AI stuff that's going on around here where you can simply just say, this is what I want you to build me, and the iterative approach that it takes to try and build, test, update, fix, get it closer to what you're actually asking for is really, really impressive. 6 months ago, I am not ashamed to say I thought that was a steaming pile of rubbish. Look, it's still not going to replace a developer, but for a lot of those things where I know what I need and I just don't have the 8 hours to sit there and code it out myself, this stuff is fantastic. So highly advise you, go in, have a look. From memory, there's a free tier to Q Developer. I can't remember what the conditions on that are. But yeah, go in, have a look, because chances are there is some aspect of it that's going to make your life easier if you deal with code in any way, shape or form. World of networking. Network Firewall introduces automated domain lists and insights. This one's kind of cool, but only in the way that you're probably not actually excited about it until you look at it after the fact. Network Firewall now gives you the ability to report on all the fully qualified domain names that your end users and clients are talking to. Now, you might sit there and go, well, that's just more logging. Why do I care about that? And the really nifty thing here, and the primary use case for it is, if you go and deploy a network firewall, you can then have it sit there and watch where all of the primary domains are that your services are going and calling out to. So the Google API endpoint, the Slack API endpoint, all of these services that your application's calling out to, you now have a list of domains that your application requires. That gives you the information that you're going to need to start blacklisting or whitelisting endpoints in order to start fine-tuning your rules. It also means that as time goes on, you get a better idea of what your standard usage pattern is, and you can start finding outliers in order to add them to the block list and all of those sorts of things. Again, for most of us on our personal projects, we're probably not even running network firewall, let alone care about this sort of stuff, but for business, for enterprise, that's a pretty useful feature. The one that I didn't realize was actually a feature that we needed until the announcement came out, network load balancers now support removing availability zones. So here's a fun fact. Prior to February, you could deploy a network load balancer and then you could go and add additional availability zones to it. But you couldn't go and remove them back out. You could only add new ones. If you needed to remove an availability zone from a load balancer, you needed to deploy a new one. I did not know this. It turns out you can now remove them from availability zones. So there you go. You can actually change the configuration of your network load balancer. Why did your laptop just go to sleep? I'm now locked out. Yeah, so you can now, update your network load balancer in flight. Yay! In the world of serverless, a bunch of stuff happened. Amplify Hosting got some IAM role capabilities for their SSR stuff. If you're in the world of Amplify Hosting and server-side rendering and all those sorts of things, that'll be exciting for you. For the rest of us, probably not. Step Functions now supports 100,000 state machines per AWS account, because if there's one thing the world needs, it's more step functions. So you can now have 100,000 per account, because I have no idea why you would need that many or that many steps, but that's like an insane number. Wickr now provides dedicated space to organize and share files. Wickr is their private end-to-end encrypted communication service. You can now share files and do a bunch of other cool bits and pieces in there. And Step Functions also got some love around distributed map. For those of you who attended the Serverless and Tools Programming meetup the other week, where we discussed distributed distributed map, it now makes spinning out even more workload, more and more endpoints to process more data even easier. So it now does some nifty things around handling JSON-L and a bunch of other file formats and those sorts of bits and pieces. Also some love in there around APM for .NET runtimes, but we don't care about .NET, so we'll move on. CloudTrail network activity events for VPC endpoints now generally available. Yay! This is more of that enterprise monitoring stuff that you don't care about unless you do. Amazon Inspector enhances the security engine for container image scanning. It does more cool stuff around scanning your containers, so preventative controls and those sorts of bits and pieces. So just a little bit more reassurance that when you upload a container, it doesn't necessarily have any baddies and it's got the right dependencies, and you're not running like 6-month out-of-date code that's got known vulnerabilities and all of those sorts of nasty bits and pieces in it. Again, one of those things, not particularly sexy, not particularly exciting, but it's good to know that it's there and it can save you from time to time. In the world of storage, EFS now supports up to 10,000 access points per EFS file system because, sure. It's nice to know that you can now have 10,000 access points. I cannot fathom a use case where you would potentially want 10,000 access points to an EFS endpoint. If somebody does have a use case for that, come and talk to me because I'm curious. But it can do it, so that's cool, I suppose. Not much else in the world of serverless happened this month, so quiet month on that front. In Dev and Ops land, code pipeline, got some more love around deployment support, backup payment methods for invoices. We're totally going to set up a backup payment option for the user group's AWS account. That's a different story. Code pipeline, CloudWatt metric support, so you can actually see, you can report on the number of, failed and successfully completed builds and all of those sorts of fun things. Cost optimization hub supports more EC2 auto scaling recommendations. So for those of you who aren't aware, you should absolutely go into your billing and account management in your AWS account, have a look at Cost Optimization Hub on the left-hand side, about 2/3 of the way down, and have a look at the recommendations it's making you for your account. There will potentially be a little bit of savings in there. A lot of it is your standard, you run a server 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you should totally look at a savings plan or a reserved instance. But some of it is also, I noticed that like your usage pattern is this, so you could totally put an auto-scaling group here, or you should look at moving to, Fargate for this, or you should, resize that instance to this type, or you should put a, whatever. So there can be some pretty useful, interesting tidbits there, and there are some ways there to get the report spit out once a month or once a week or whenever you want, so you can just sort of keep an eye on your account to stop it from doing that exponential like growth thing. Code Build now supports integration with BuildKite. So for those of you who've been sitting there with your BuildKite implementations going, I want better native support to AWS, you have that now. Kind of exciting. CloudFormation. That thing that, we used before CDK and Terraform and all that became a thing? Yeah, so it got some more love. You can actually do the transfer family range of products in CloudFormation now. Yay! And yeah, stack refactoring. That's an interest. That's one that I want to look into more. There's potentially a talk around using this. Apparently, it has a really nice way of being able to clean up those CloudFormation stacks that were written back then that you've then iterated on and iterated on and iterated on and probably aren't necessarily in the best pattern or the best architecture anymore, and you kind of want to rejig a bit. This apparently is a good way to address that. As I say, haven't had a chance to dig into it too much. There is a really good potential talk there around what it does do really well and what it doesn't. Maybe somebody will get a chance to dive into that and give a talk one day. We might talk about that in the second session this afternoon. The last one here, because it is something that I've been pushing for a while. Deadline Cloud now supports Adobe After Effects. Woo! You're obviously not as excited about that as I am. Okay, fair enough. So for those of you who aren't aware, because it's not exactly one of their really common services, Deadline Cloud is basically a managed visual render farm solution. So when you're doing your big Adobe After Effects or your big special effects for your, $100 million movie, and you need to span it out to, 1,000 or 5,000 nodes to do all of the simulations to generate all your frames and that sort of stuff, you can use Deadline Cloud. It now officially supports Adobe After Effects. So rather than sitting there for 10 hours waiting for your desktop to do your Adobe After Effects render, you can upload it to Deadline Cloud, pay AWS a boatload of money, and it'll do it for you. Yay! Or you could just not use Adobe After Effects, but that's a topic for a meetup that isn't this one. And with that, I think it is time for our first presentation.
Thanks, Matt. Woo. All right, Trent, if you can. This. Yep.
See how things go. And here's your direction. Let's just let's use that. That's not a mute. Okay.
You just worry about that.
All right. Cool. Let's see. All right. Cool. Cool. All right. Cool. All right. Hi, I'm Trent. I'm just gonna give a talk on AWS Fargate. There's a bit of a backstory for this. I work at a consulting company. One of the sellers at the consulting company was talking to one of our customers, and he's like, "What's this Fargate stuff?" So I took it upon myself to come up with this talk. So I haven't given this talk before, so bear with me. It's probably 200 level, so go easy on me. So this is just a bit of background about me. I've been doing tech for about 25-ish years. And on the way in to work today on the train, I was recalling that my first talk, one of my first ever meetup talks, was at this meetup in 2012. So this is the evidence. So this is 2012. This was back when the meetup was hosted at YBH. I was at REA Group, and so here's a photo of me. I was much thinner and younger and better. And my talk, I was obsessed with F1. And so my talk was on what REA is doing in AWS. And so I was pretty nervous, so encourage everyone to give it a go, give it a crack, doing a talk. It's a fun experience. It can be nerve-wracking, but it was good. So the talk was, so this was back, in 2012. I was in a different role. I used to love MySQL, probably don't much love it anymore. And I was talking about REA Group. So REA Group at that point in time, it started looking at AWS, REA Group, so realestate.com.au and various other property portals. They were looking at running some stuff in AWS, or running all of their dev environments in the cloud, but they had some big issues, which is the work that I was doing when I was at REA Group at that point in time. So the big issues that they have is that they have all of these property images. Real estate agents would upload their listing content and images, and all of this used to be stored in data center on NetApp SAN, and it was 15 terabytes at that point in time, and REA was running out of space. The business proposition at REA Group at that point in time, like the iPhone had just come out, Retina display, so the business wanted higher res images, and we're like, holy shit, we cannot do this in NetApp. And so the story about the meetup that I gave in 2012 was about, this is how the image serving worked at REA Group. We're using NetApp. NetApp was becoming a big constraint. We didn't have any space within the data center to have new NetApp racks. So we needed to fix that problem, and we looked at AWS. S3 was like the ideal candidate for that. And then the story was about how we ended up moving the image serving over to AWS. So again, I really encourage everyone to doing a talk. I was really nervous. Look at my diagrams, they're not that good. My diagrams right now are not that much better. But so it really encouraged you to, if you want to give a talk, it can be about anything. It's a good experience, really recommend it. So I've been at other places. I've probably left REA Group. Maybe they're glad that I'm left. I've joined some other places. I'm currently a cloud consultant at BJSS now. And I'm doing some other cloud stuff at the moment. I'm not going to talk about that. So the talk today, I'm going to talk about AWS Fargate. I'm going to try and cover off these points here around what Fargate is trying to solve, Firecracker and Fargate. And then I'm going to do a bit of a high level around the compare and contrast between Elastic Container Service and Elastic Kubernetes Service within AWS, and some pros and cons and maybe some advanced topics. Cool. So back when I was at REA Group and we're running stuff on TIN in data center, I used to mentally map like a server in this way. So REA Group had their backend system. It was Ruby. So it was a Ruby application, and then there were some application libraries. So like the MySQL client library. The front end for REA Group is all Java Spring. So there was also a Java runtime. And then, of course, there was the operating system. So I used to think about things that were running in a server in this way. And so around that point in time, in 2012, there was the rise of the 12-factor app, and that really provides a recommendation on how you package up an application in best practice. So at that point in time was, all right, let's package up an application as a zip file or as an RPM file, and then at that point in time, containers became a thing. So what then I found is that you're packaging up your application container, your application with your application libraries as a Docker container. And that became an artifact that you progress through all of your environments. And so as instances or servers became bigger, you'd probably have a lot of those containers at that point in time. REA Group at 2014, they weren't using any type of container scheduling like ECS or EKS. They were running their own container orchestration, which was just spinning up an EC2 instance and deploying containers onto a single EC2 instance. And that worked. But also what is something that I found is quite common is that the thing down the bottom, you're running an EC2 instance, you just let it run, and then there's a 0-day for SSH or Log4j, and it's really hard to keep track of your underlying operating system and ensure that you're constantly updating the operating system packages. What's worse is that when you launch an EC2 instance, you probably attach an instance profile role that has some access. So if you can pop into an instance and you can hit the metadata service, you can get your IAM keys, and then you can just do some stuff. So this is just a big security risk, but it's really easily forgotten. And so those characteristics is really what born Fargate. So the idea of Fargate is, I just want to run a container. I don't want to bother with the underlying EC2 infrastructure. I want to offload all of that responsibility to AWS. So just allow me to schedule a container. And so within AWS, there's a few ways to schedule containers. You're either using the container service, ECS, or Kubernetes in EKS. So then there's Firecracker. So back in 2014, Lambda launched within AWS. And the way Lambda used to run within AWS was that there were T-class instances that Amazon used to host, and they would run your Lambda function on their EC2 compute. And AWS decided that this was probably cost prohibitive for them, and they wanted a better way and provide some additional isolation of your Lambda function. And they decided to create a Firecracker. So Firecracker is a micro VM virtualization, and its responsibility is to run containers or run functions. And this really underpins what Fargate is. It's a Firecracker micro VM when it comes to Linux, and that is the thing that's running your Fargate container. So what do you get with Fargate? Really, you get allocation of compute, an allocation of memory, an a way to execute the launch of a container, and you've got a network interface, and you've got an IAM role. And with Fargate and ECS and EKS, you can mix and match. Either if you want to run EC2 compute that registers with the ECS service, you can do that, or you can run a Fargate container in ECS. So you've got a lot of flexibility of using Fargate or using standard EC2 compute for the compute layer of your application. Okay, so Fargate's good. It gives you a way to launch a container. You can run it in ECS. You can run it in EKS. How is it priced? So there's really a couple of pricing dimensions for Fargate. So really, you can use x86 containers or ARM containers. You can run Windows Server Core, and you can run Linux. And then you can launch it using Spot or on demand. So there's various trade-offs. So ARM is going to be cheaper, but it doesn't support Windows Server Core. Spot ARM is the cheapest out of the lot. So Spot on average, you're paying like 30 cents on the dollar. And with ARM, you're paying about 80 cents on the dollar when it comes to x86 on demand. And so the other dimension of how Fargate is priced is that you've got a menu option of sizing. So you've got a laundry list of, this is the CPU allocation I want, and this is the memory I want, and then also this is the operating system. But as a menu, you have to pick one of these options to launch your Fargate container. And this can be a bit of a drawback, which I'll go into in a little bit. So in summary, how is it priced? It's priced by your launch dimensions, if you're Spot on demand, x86 ARM, if you're using Windows or Linux. And so it's pretty simple construct of how it's priced. It can get expensive, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But now it probably makes sense to talk about the elephant in the room, which is EKS and ECS. So before going into the trade-offs between EKS and ECS and Fargate, the way to think about EKS and ECS is that there's the orchestration part of running containers, and then there's the compute to run containers. So Fargate sits in the area where you're running your application, you're running your container, and Amazon's responsibility is the orchestration of executing the run of those containers. And so the thing then is, which of those orchestration platforms is best suited for you? And that's really where that's a massive design decision that most businesses will face. And so there's really a couple of trade-offs between ECS and EKS. So ECS is highly opinionated. It's very simple. It's very AWS specific. And probably more importantly is that it can support a decentralized run. And I might go into that in a little bit shortly. Whereas a trade-off for EKS is that it's highly flexible. It's basically managed Kubernetes, but you have to manage all of the specific add-ons for Kubernetes. You probably need some custom skill sets due to the flexibility. It claims to be cloud agnostic, but I think the devil is in the detail. But probably more importantly, Kubernetes itself prefers a centralized run operating model. And so what do I mean by decentralized or centralized? Within Kubernetes fits really well if you've got like an SRE team and their job is to run and manage and maintain your entire workloads. Whereas if you're a business and you've gone down a you build it, you run it operating model, ECS is probably a little bit better for you because each individual team can create their own ECS cluster, can be quite small, can be quite self-contained, very simple to use, and you don't have that management complexity overhead. So really, I think that the decision point between ECS and EKS is really the operating model of the business. Do you prefer a centralized run operating model, or do you prefer a you build it, you run it, decentralized operating model? Kubernetes doesn't really work well when you have multiple clusters because you don't get that scale of bin packing and running containers together. So I think that's really the trade-off between which container scheduler to use. So I want to go into this in maybe a tiny bit more detail and get back to the point I made about cost and Fargate. So if I look at, say, ECS, this is, say, you're running like an EC2 instance and you're running ECS tasks on it. So you've got your container tasks. You've probably got some auxiliary services that run on that EC2 instance. So like shared logging. And then you've got the operating system itself. And so if you look at like what an EKS node would look like, so if you've got an EC2 instance, you're running pods, you've probably got some daemon sets for like logging or maybe some observability or maybe some authentication. And then you've got your operating system. So if you're running EC2 and you're running in Kube or running in ECS, this is kind of what you'd be running within an EC2 instance. And it's also worth noting, like the bigger the instance, the more network interfaces you can attach as well. So it's quite common within the Kubernetes space that you have a large instance with a lot of pods, and then you have a large instance so you can leverage the number of ENIs that you need for the pods that are running on each EC2 instance. So getting back to cost, one thing to note, particularly within the Kubernetes landscape, is that if you're scheduling something, if you've got like a Carpenter or if you've got like a scheduler scheduling pods on a container, you probably have this like Tetris view of each individual pod. So your pod might want, one pod might want a lot of memory and not a lot of CPU shares. You might have other pods that want more CPU and less memory. And ultimately, it's the scheduler's job, so it's Carpenter's job to just figure out what is the best placement. And you generally are optimizing to maximize the compute usage and the memory usage. This is probably where it comes to, this is where cost, it becomes a thing. So within Fargate, if you were to run it with Fargate, you can only run one pod in Fargate. And it's likely that, say, you've got a pod, what you need, the resource utilization that you need for one pod might not fit well within Fargate. You might have this waste, and ultimately that waste within Fargate, if the equivalent of running that pod within Fargate, that's just additional costs that you're going to bear. In addition, and this is probably more important, in Fargate you don't have any daemon sets. So you need to re-architect what your daemon sets are as sidecars, so you're effectively duplicating all of that compute that you run once. And therefore you need bigger compute, more memory, and you've got a lot of Fargate, and unless you right-size your compute within Fargate, you'll have a lot of waste. And a lot of waste, in particular within Kubernetes, means a lot of cost. So similarly, if you can right-size things within Fargate, it's generally cost comparable to running things on EC2. But in the Kubernetes space in particular, you're needing to duplicate your daemon sets. It just becomes generally a cost prohibitive problem to run Fargate pods in Kubernetes as opposed to just running EC2 for your nodes within EKS. So Fargate can get expensive, particularly within Kubernetes. Okay. So then, to compare and contrast, so this is a workplace I used to work at, and they were in a decentralized operating model. They preferred ECS, and so their application stack was building microservices. You'd have an ECS task with your application container, an OAuth sidecar, an observability sidecar, and a data service. And so the team would manage and maintain this application. And that really worked well because they believed in a decentralized operating model. They thought it would be easier for them to scale and go fast as opposed to having a centralized run. So this type of team structure and this architecture works really well in using ECS Fargate in that operating model. Okay, so pros and cons for Fargate in general. Fargate's good. It offloads a lot of the operational responsibility. You pay for what you need. You get better security isolation. But the trade-off is ultimately in Kubernetes, you're probably going to pay a lot more. It's probably cost prohibitive for Kube. and you just can't customize the underlying OS because you've outsourced that over to AWS. So I was thinking about trying to do a quick demo, but my demo's not really working too well. So in my demo, I've got a build pipeline, and my job with my build pipeline is to in essence take a Docker container, package up that Docker container, and then deploy it into ECS Fargate. I was trying to get the same Docker container scheduled into Kate's, but I didn't have much luck when I was trying to do this demo this morning on the train in. But simply, so this is my AWS environment. I've got a build pipeline. I can prove it's real. So this is my Docker container. I don't use Amazon Q. I use Cursor. So I've got access to Sonnet 3.7. Just I think that's a little bit better. Sorry, AWS. So let me just try and add this and git commit mainstream updated. Okay. And if I can type things well, origin git push origin main. Okay. Okay. So I've made a change to a Docker container. It's going to say hello new world. This is the current running version of my ECS container. So my pipeline is pretty straightforward. I'm doing probably a lot more things than what I should be doing in a pipeline. I'm just no-opping the creation of an ECR repo to store my Docker container. I'm no-opping a VPC build, and I've just got some auxiliary stuff that I'm doing as well. Right now, I'm just doing a Docker build here within GitHub. The steps of my pipeline are to do a Docker build, is to do a inspector code scan of my Docker container, fail the build if the risk level is over a specific level, and then publish that build and then trigger a deployment. So I've got pretty straightforward, and then for my deployment, all I'm doing is a CloudFormation update stack, passing in the Docker container as passing in the Docker container as a parameter to CloudFormation. Now this is probably going to take about 5 minutes, so let's not wait for that. So what you see within Fargate, I've got a cluster, I've got a service. My service has an attached load balancer that I've created per my CloudFormation stack. My service has a task. I've just got a single task. My task has 2 containers running. I've got my Nginx container, and then I've got a SSM agent sidecar running as well. So I don't really see too much else in terms of Fargate. So if I look into my task, I'm running of launch type Fargate. I'm running a spot instance, and that's really all I can see. The other things I can probably so I don't see here anything within the EC2 control plane. I see an instance that I'm running for other reasons, but not for the purposes of this. The only way I can know it's a Fargate container is if I can find the ENI. I can eventually find out that there's a specific AWS account, and this is a different ENI, but this is owned by an AWS account that's not my AWS account, which is 5035. So this task is running in Amazon somewhere else, and Amazon have just exposed an ENI, and they've just given me the compute, and I just can't really see anything else apart from that. And it's the same story when it comes to into Kube. So I've got a Kubernetes cluster. I'm running some Fargate pods, particularly for the Kube system, and not too much else. And then so eventually, after 5 minutes, this Docker container will build. A deploy, it looks like a deploy is occurring, and this ECS task will eventually update, but I'm not going to wait for it because it's going to take a little bit more time. Okay, so that was a bit of a quick demo. Fargate is simple. It takes away some of the operational responsibility. I like that. Doesn't really work well with the EKS, but there's probably some middle ground with EKS. And I want to just quickly touch on the middle ground for EKS. So there's some stuff that we can do with EKS that I think is beneficial when it comes to Fargate. And then I might touch on some additional topics around ECS and Fargate Spot. So within Kubernetes, you need to generally run nodes on EC2. If you look at Amazon Linux, so one of the initial issues that Fargate was aiming to solve was all of this security risk with running compute. Handing that over to Fargate, that's great. There's an alternate way, or at least middle ground. So if you're running EC2 instance, you may be running Amazon Linux. Amazon Linux has a lot of stuff on it. Bottlerocket Linux, however, is a very cut down AMI, and that's probably a good alternate middle ground for running compute within Kubernetes. And so I recommend using an image builder or Packer to be able to constantly update your AMI and have a golden AMI. But basing your AMI on Bottlerocket is a very good middle ground for running nodes in EKS. Another thing to think about when it comes to EKS is that I think about you've got things that orchestrate your Kubernetes cluster, and then there's the workloads themselves. And so the things that orchestrate your cluster, like Carpenter, are generally static and predictable, whereas your workload are really commensurate to demand. And so I think the middle ground for Kubernetes and Fargate is to put all of the predictable kube system stuff on Fargate, and then drive anything in this box out of Carpenter. And you probably also get a cost benefit by taking this approach in EKS. So I think Fargate's okay for running Carpenter and some of the other kube system things, and then use Carpenter to drive the node groups. And then when it comes to ECS, ECS has got some pretty cool turnkey capability to leverage Spot. So if I go back to my console within ECS, in my infrastructure, I provision 2 capacity providers, which is basically what can do the work. I've got my Fargate capacity provider, and I've got my Fargate Spot capacity provider. So what you can do in ECS is you can say, well, I want to schedule 9/10 all of my tasks on Fargate Spot and 1/10 on Fargate. So this is pretty turnkey to be able to get you some good cost savings in ECS, but then there's the resiliency trade-off. So if you can couple this with some type of fault injection to verify that your application can survive the worst scenario, you can get some really good savings by using ECS and Fargate Spot. And you might notice that was part of the reason for running the SSM agent. So if you want to use Amazon fault injection service, you need to run a SSM agent sidecar. And that was the reason for doing that. Okay, so anyway, so I've talked a lot and I've rambled. This is the first time I've done this talk. I recommend, if you've not done a talk, give it a go. Fargate is good way to reduce security surface area risk. Probably not great for kube in the main, but good for the kube orchestration stuff. Size your workloads appropriately to avoid any unnecessary spend. And that was it. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions? There was a lot to cover there. I'm sure we can get.
Testing. Any luck with Fargate, Carpenter, and custom CNI? haven't had any. Tried the exact same strategy you used,
Uh,
but I believe you need to use the VPC IP address management.
yeah, no,
No luck,
not
yeah.
for that, no.
But in
no.
essence, it won't work.
Okay.
So in terms of ECS Carpenter, like you said, the Fargate was definitely going to be expensive. So any idea in terms of like what percentage of extra cost we'll have to pay? Because there's definitely some benefit for Fargate as compared with using Carpenter with ECS. So do you have any observations on costing pricing, like how much we can potentially save, or what would be the use case when I go for quickly for Fargate?
In Kubernetes or in
Yeah, specifically ECS with Carpenter as against if I want to launch in Fargate, what's the cost comparisons?
I'll probably answer that a different way. So I used to, I used to work at Catch, and so Catch was extremely cost conscious. So to not answer you, the only way to save money with Catch was to run everything on Spot. So we're running Kube, had to run everything on Spot. So trying to do cluster autoscaler on Fargate, and then drive everything else out of Spot. And so the cost benefit was just using Spot. But there was a lot of other things that were beneficial to Catch to be able to do this. So it was, do we understand the resiliency posture of our workloads? Can we prove that things will work when things don't work? You were running crons, or were you running crons idempotently? So there was a lot of other things around that needed to go right before there was enough confidence of being able to run Spot. So that's kind of a non-answer answer. Yeah.
Anybody else have other questions? Yep, you pass that down.
Hi, Trent. I wanted to know, currently in our case, we are running a Java application in the cluster, and to capture the logs, we use a sidecar wherein we deploy the Fluent bit pods in there. So how this can be achieved in Fargate?
That should be no different.
No different.
Because it's just ultimately you've got a Fargate task, and then you've got, that will be no different, I don't believe. Let me, if you want, let me come back to you.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
We have a question from YouTube viewer, Hugh. Have you encountered issues with Fargate cold start?
I've not. I've not, but in so in this this is probably this use case here where there was a heavy ECS Fargate usage. The min counts as an example within ECS was enough to be able to address the availability concerns of this workplace. So no, not come across any cold start, but it was ultimately designing for what the resiliency posture of that workload that it needed to be. So no.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Right. Oh, Matt, have you got slides on yours? Cool. Who else do we have talking?
So it will be a little bit of a. There will be a few people sort of coming up and doing a spiel. Yeah, cool. Easy done.
There we go.
I will take this one. Okay. Let's see if I can get this.
You found it?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't see yours though.
Oh. It was in the link inside.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Did you want me to message it to you? Or?
Yeah, if you can. You can message that one, and then in the meantime, I will. You get to look at me dancing for a minute while we do technical stuff.
So, does anyone have any good jokes? Stand up night at the user group meetup.
Woo.
So, just fixing some technical difficulties with the slide pack.
Kind of the fact that I forgot that in order to present a presentation, you sometimes need a presentation. But that's okay.
That's funny.
I don't know. Okay, well, we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it. We'll roll with it because it kind of actually speaks to the topic that we're talking about.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, so I've got
You want that?
a nice fancy lapel one. All right, so welcome to talk number 2 for tonight. Speaking at a meetup. So for those of you who aren't aware, meetups are this thing where people come and meet together and talk about stuff. So tonight we thought, as we kind of alluded to, we'd sort of get up and have a little bit of a chat about what it takes to get up and speak at one of these things. And the fact that we would like more of you to get up and talk about these things. So originally this was going to be a little bit of a us as a leadership team getting up and having a little bit of a chat about how we don't want to be the ones up here all the time talking because it's a community thing, not a leadership thing. I unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, and then we kind of realised that, well, if we want to talk about other people, it would be good to have some other people come up and talk, which is why Dale is here. We're also going to get Stephen and whoever else wants to come up and have a little bit of a chat about these sorts of things. This session, we've got some notes here that we're sort of going to run through as we go along, but I want you guys to be able to chime in as we go along. If you've got questions, raise your hand. This can be a two-way conversation as we sort of go along, so feel free to interrupt, jump in, stick your hand up, do whatever it is that you want to do as we go along. There isn't any real rhyme or flow to this. We've just got some slides that we've got here purely as some thought points and some things that people have discussed or raised with us in the past. So don't feel as if you're going to interrupt the flow. This is all sort of completely, well, relatively ad-libbed. But where we thought we'd start, talking to a lot of people when we're sort of looking for speakers, the number one reason that people seem to not want to come and present at these sorts of things is nobody would be interested in what I have to say, right? And that's complete rubbish. This is a community event. We all do different things, different ways, at different times. We are all at different levels in our career, in our technologies. Plus, the IT landscape nowadays is so broad, and there's so many languages and technologies and ways of doing things. You will always find somebody that will get value from your viewpoint. And it will always be more people than you think, and it will always be more valuable than you think it is. Never underestimate the value that you can give somebody else through your experience. The path you have walked will save somebody else from pain or misery or making a bad decision at some point. We can absolutely guarantee it. In fact, some of the best presentations we've had here over the years have been, I did this and it didn't work. I thought it would be a good idea to deploy this thing, and well, I'll give you an example, right? Like I was preparing for a presentation one year on video transformation and video streaming and all of these sorts of things, and walked through a bunch of stuff that IVS and the Elemental range of products did. The back half of that story is the fact that I left the dual path 4K 60 frames a second video stream running for 26.5 days and racked up an $8,500 bill in my personal account. Oops. Luckily enough, some words to AWS along the lines of, I'm a poor IT guy, I can't afford $8,500, I'm so sorry. You know, got it down to, yeah, you're also a community builder and an ambassador, so you should probably know better. And there are these things called, you know, billing alarms that, like, we can't help but notice that you don't have on your account. So let's make you pay a percentage of that as a you should have known better fee, and we'll waive the rest. So they will be nice to you sometimes, but you know, that's an example of don't do what I did. Even if it is your own personal account, the takeaway from that is set up some billing alarms. If it's a personal account, you don't do much in it, set up a billing alarm for $100 a month, right? That's a technical takeaway for tonight. But the point is, like, anything you do, someone will find value for. So don't feel as if it's not interesting, it's not technical enough, it's not complex enough, it's not fancy enough, it's not about generative AI, so therefore nobody's going to be interested. Trust me, the more talks you can get about not generative AI, the better.
Yeah, and I will say to that as well, I mean, as much as you may think it, you're not special. So if you have something that's of interest to you, there's going to be lots of other people that will be. So yeah, you know, anything that's piqued your interest personally, there will be others. You know, you're not unique, you're not special. I mean, you're special to us.
I think
all of you are special to us. We love
think
you. We want to see you.
There's a movie, something, you're not a unique snowflake, something, I can't remember, yeah. Probably not a topic for...
So, like, if it's interesting to you, there'll be others. And the other thing too, if it's interesting to you, then, you know, you're going to present it a lot better. Something that you're interested in, you know, that'll flow better than if you choose a topic because you think other people might be interested in it.
That will come across.
Yeah. So something that you've done that you've found interesting, yeah, it'll flow better. You know, people can read. You know, that they'll read you, and if you're interested in it, yeah.
Little bit of a pivot, but also not. We're all standing up here sort of saying you should give a talk, right? It's, you know, it's fun, you know, it's not that, like, people would be interested in it, but like, why? Why would you give a talk? Well, there's a bunch of reasons, right? You might want to gain some confidence in public speaking. I mean, public speaking is not an invaluable skill, right? You may want to improve your communication skills. You may want to solidify your knowledge. One of the best ways for you to learn a topic is to pull together a presentation to teach the topic to others. That is a fantastic way of reinforcing your knowledge and finding the gaps in your own understanding. Plus, the level of detail, like I can talk specifically, the level of additional understanding I've gotten on topics from the questions people have asked at the end of some of my sessions, all right? Like before, we would, like Trent got some questions there, all right? Those questions at the end have made me, in some of my presentations, actually go away, find the answers because I didn't know the answer. Right? Somebody comes up and says, oh, you know, but what about this? And how would you do this? And the answer is, oh, I have no freaking idea. But let me go away and have a look. And you go away and you have a look and you learn some more. And again, it goes back to what Jason said. If it's a topic about something that you've enjoyed or are interested in, that little bit of additional research is going to be enjoyable to you. You're going to go find some more. And then potentially you've got another thing to come away with.
And on that as well, like, don't be afraid of saying that you don't know. Like, if people ask questions, like, that's one area that can get people quite nervous. You finish your talk and then like, oh my God, I hope they don't ask me. Yeah, the whole imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, I've given this talk, they'll think I know everything. You're not going to know everything. I mean, they may ask you questions that are right down your alleyway, and you can fire them back, and that's awesome. But don't be afraid if people ask you questions that you're not sure about. Like, just say like, hey, that I haven't looked at that slide. Hey, that's a great question. I haven't looked at that's interesting, and you can go and research for yourself.
I don't know is a perfectly legitimate answer to the question. So you don't need to feel as if you need to know everything. There is also no obligation that you have to go away and look for the answer. Oh, no. Right? Like you're gumming up and giving your time. Like there isn't the obligation that if somebody asks you a question, you have to go and find the answer for them. Right? You can absolutely, like feel free to, but there isn't an obligation. Like this isn't something where you're then committing yourself to being the expert in whatever it is you're talking about.
No one's paying you.
No.
I mean, we give you free food.
Well, yeah, we'll give you free food and drink and all of those sorts of things. And kind of tying into this last point, we may even do a LinkedIn post about you, right? There's lots of people taking lots of photos at these sorts of events, speaking at a meetup, and this doesn't go for just this meetup, but any meetup. It's a great way to expand your network, meet new people, get some exposure. If you want to put public speaker on your LinkedIn bio, well, you spoke publicly, like you can absolutely do that.
You can. We record everything. It's all available on YouTube, and we see quite a lot of public speakers or speakers who presented here go and then promote their talk on their LinkedIn with a link, and you can embed the video directly. Yep.
That's all absolutely a thing. So if you want to be able to point, hey, I came up and gave a presentation on XYZ, that's another great thing for you.
Looks really good on the resume.
Yeah.
Yep, and you can tie that YouTube to start when you start talking as well. So people don't have to search for you and sit through the what's new and the first talk, or you just link straight to there as well, and that's good.
Feel free to grab a microphone, anybody else, by the way. Like, it doesn't just need to be the Jason and Matt show here.
I'll add a little anecdote to your previous slide then. I am a very large introvert, and public speaking was a way for me to try and get out of that a little bit, try and be less nervous when I come to events like this. It didn't work. I'm still nervous when I come and do stuff like this, but I'm a whole lot better at public speaking now. And, once you've done it enough, you can get comfortable with that.
I guess as a question to people, how many people here would agree with the saying that the thing people fear more than death is public speaking? Sound about right? I was once right there with you. So background, autism, Asperger's syndrome, incredibly introverted by nature. How did I get good at public speaking? Did I suddenly wake up and realize I'm good at public speaking now? Nope. I got up there and I made a fool out of myself. The first event I emceed, I was thinking, okay, I've got this. I did a nice wave of my hand to introduce someone. I knocked a glass over and sent beer flying everywhere and smashed the glass. Oh. So I tell you what, these things, they can happen. And guess what? People laughed and people were understanding. And suddenly, things do get a little bit easier.
And most people probably won't even remember that happened.
No, just me. Like literally 10 years later, and it's still a core memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish it. Actually, no. I'm glad it's not.
But yeah, so like, give it a shot. But on that note, like, it's all well and good for all of us to stand up here and say, get up and give it a try. We thought we'd sort of give you a couple of pointers on like how you might go about doing that, and a few points on sort of what you could do. Make it fun. Again, this goes back to Jason's point from before. If it is something you enjoyed, something you find interesting, you will enjoy it more. So just enjoy it, right? Like, get up, you can have a talk. It doesn't need to be polished. Just enjoy yourself is kind of the first one here. The end of the day, this is not, people haven't paid $10,000 for a seat at this event, right? They're not going to be particularly critical of you. The point is to get up and share knowledge. It goes back to our code of conduct. It goes back to the reason that this is a user group, the reason it exists in the community. We're all here to share knowledge. So, just get up, have some fun. I probably should have played the animation before I was talking, but that's okay. This is what happens when the first time you actually run through the deck, like from end to end, is when you're giving the talk, because things don't need to be, polished. Share personal experiences and stories. Again, this sort of goes back to a little bit, like, use your own anecdotes. If there's something that you did, you can talk about that. If there's something you tried, talk about that. You don't need to have succeeded. You don't have to have failed. It can be, hey, I'm doing this thing and I haven't actually finished. I gave a presentation here last year on my R2-D2 robot. The presentation was meant to be me and R2 up here on stage, showing how I built the robot and all the cool, wonderful things that it could do. It ended up being a presentation by me on all the things that had gone wrong to date, and all the many, many, many reasons why R2 was not on stage with me at that point in time. He's still in many pieces and still a work in progress for various other reasons that have gone wrong since then, but that's, again, a different story.
Can we book you in for a talk on that later this year then?
Absolutely.
Done.
Absolutely.
It'll still be not working. But
well, he's supposed to be working so that he can go to NDC the end of April, so like there's a ticking clock on this one now. Because again, guy with ADHD, like severe ADHD, I need lines in sand in order to like get things done. So nothing says get it done like a conference that people are paying hundreds of dollars to attend. Like, it needs to be done now. So it'll be done.
But also too on that share personal stories and experience. I mean, Trent showed that with, like, he opened his with how he started and how he went through, and it gives a bit more sort of weight to the talk. It lets people know a little bit about you, but also your interests and how that ties in with your talk. And
the other bit is this, and I was talking to a few of you before we started tonight. This is a user group. This is not an AWS sales pitch event. Like, the goal of this isn't to get you to use more AWS or increase your spend every month. The point is to learn from each other, and we learn by doing. That's one of the ways that humans gain understanding. So you can talk about your own little things. Now, if that means that we're not saying that you get up here and divulge all of your your employer's personal deep dark secrets and here's this confidential thing that we're building that we're going to launch in market 6 months from now. You can for all intents and purposes, you can change names, you can change reasons. It doesn't need to be entirely truthful. No one's coming to hear all of that sort of stuff, but it can be the basis for sort of what you're talking about. Use humour. You will notice that most of us don't mind looking the fool, don't mind poking fun at ourselves, don't mind cracking a joke. Myself is kind of the prime candidate in this one. I use it as a mechanism. I use it as a coping mechanism to help with my fear of public speaking, because, like you can tell, I don't like public speaking, based on how much of it I've done tonight. Humour goes a long way. If there's something funny, if there's a joke, anything like that, it's a good way to break things up. It's a good way to break the ice. You know, use it where appropriate, right? Like at the end of the day, like also remember, like humour, just because it's funny to you doesn't necessarily mean it's funny to others. Like I myself have even, you know, crossed the line on more than one occasion where it's kind of like, I thought that was very funny until I actually stopped and thought about it through the eyes and ears of other people in the room, and it's not so funny anymore.
And it doesn't have to be flat out jokes either.
No.
You can build it into your slides as you go, like, you know, just subtle references. I saw a presentation last week by somebody who had AI generated every photo or every image in his presentation, but there was a beer somewhere in every single one of them, and that became half the fun, is trying to spot the beer in there. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that one thing doing talks at user groups by comparison to things like, you know, university lecturers. I'm sure many of us have had university lecturers who talk in a monotone. They'll describe what's on the deck very in detail. And oh my God, could I please have something to catch my attention? One thing is that we're all here to nerd out over the tech. Can we kind of agree to that? Is that something we're here to do? Nerd out over some cool tech?
Yes.
Yep. Excellent. Yes. So that's the thing, is that we're here because we want to be people talking to people. You don't need to be the most polished presenter in the world. Just come and talk to us about what you think is cool and let that shine through.
Yeah.
Also, too, you don't necessarily have to use humour if that's not
Your thing.
You know, everything that we're presenting here is just ideas, options. So yeah, I mean, if you like a little bit of humour, feel free to sprinkle that in. If that's not your thing,
Don't.
It's not a stand-up routine. It doesn't need to be.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's not, Matt.
No, it's not. It's really not. The other option, and this ties into something that we're looking for a little bit of feedback from you lot around. If you don't want to get up and stand up here for 30 minutes on your own and talk about something, co-present. There is no rule that says that there is only allowed to be one person on stage. Like, you know, we have 5. Last month we had the panel discussion around reInvent. There is no problem with having multiple people up here. So if, you know, 2, 3, 4 of you want to get together and talk about something, that is perfectly fine. The thing that we would like to open up to you is, are there other things that you would like to see us as a group do in order to make things easier? Are people interested in us running lightning talk sessions where instead of one 30-minute talk, we might have, you know, 4 or 5 or 10-minute presentations? All right, give yourself an opportunity to do a 5-minute spiel on something as opposed to trying to fill 30 minutes, because 30 minutes is a lot longer than you think. It's also a lot shorter in different contexts, but that's okay. You know, so our lightning talk something that people would find easy. The other thing that Stephen and I were talking about before, Stephen had the really good idea of, would people like to come up and do the What's New segment? If you just want to build your public speaking skills, but you don't necessarily have a topic or don't feel comfortable talking about a specific thing, we are more than happy to give you the What's New talking points ahead of time. We build every month, that comes with that deck is a Google Sheets document that has all of the new announcements on each slide and links to their announcement blog post. So you can go through a couple of days before the user group, read all the notes, come up with your own speaking points, and you could come up and just present that. If that's something people are interested in, we are more than happy for people to get up and, you know, rather than it being one of the organisers every month, have it be somebody from the community. So again, any other ideas that you have around ways to lower the bar to increase participation, we are more than open.
Yeah, and on that too with the What's New, I mean, tonight it was just Matt, but usually we have 2 presenters doing the What's New, and sort of feed off each other a little bit as well. So, you know, don't feel that you'd have to do the What's New by yourself. You can come up and join one of us on up here doing the What's New, and just sort of
we can do it together. We can
work
do
through.
those sorts of things. If you want to have a discussion about it ahead of time, we can do that as well. Engage the audience. Again, this is one of those, as all of these are, optional things. Demos, workshops, group discussion, quizzes. Like Stephen did it before. Ask questions as we sort of go along. Who's interested in this? Raise your hand if that. Like Trent walked through a demo before and actually showed how something worked. You don't necessarily have to do any of those things. Like demos can be a little bit daunting to do in front of people.
And they often double as humour.
Oh, they absolutely often double as humour. Because half the time they don't work, because you only tested it 6 times and it worked perfectly fine the first 6 times. Why wouldn't it work when you're up on stage, right? Like it's the demo gods. They don't like you. They don't like anybody. But yeah, just engage the audience, participation. But again, if that's not your thing, if just getting up here and talking is enough for you, that's fine too. And don't do this. Again, Stephen alluded to this before with the university professors. I'm talking to you all, but I can see half your eyes are on the screen trying to read all those bullet points. Now, I also understand the irony in me standing here pointing at this slide right now, because I literally did this to you an hour and a half ago, all right, and gave you slides full of text. The What's New segment is a little bit of a complicated one, right? Because on the one hand, we want to show you what's new. On the other hand, we don't want to give you a wall of text every slide. Slides are there to help, right? You can put up images, you can put what you think is relevant up there, but don't turn it into here's a wall of text and now I'm going to read you the wall of text. That's what a blog post is for. Now, speaking of that, if public speaking is not your thing and you would absolutely still want to produce some content and you want to write your content, talk to us about that too, because we can everybody up here can help you write a blog post. So if you want to use that as sort of an introduction to are people interested in what I have to say, you can absolutely use that as an opportunity as well. So just a side, not technically the topic of the talk, but still an option. How much did you practice? I'm going to actually ask you lot that.
It varies depending on how comfortable I am with the subject first. And quite often if you're giving a talk again for the 2nd or 3rd time, because they're quite reusable, practice less, but still a lot.
I like knowing where my slides are going to go, but I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have a fairly good idea of what's in there. I just know I want to talk to it. So as long as I know what my slides are going to be, and as long as I know my topic, which again, if you know your topic, it'll roll off the tongue fairly easily.
If you don't know your topic, practice is the way to know the topic.
Yep.
Which is why I don't talk about too many things, because I'm not very much of an expert in many things.
Not yet an expert.
Oh, enabling
There
language,
it
growth
is.
mindset. There we go.
it is. Jace?
Yeah, no, that's been an interesting one. Like there are times when I've been like, hey, the presenters pulled out the night before. Has anyone got something that they can... those things I have pretty much done no practice. Obviously, that's where you want to sort of throw up something that you actually know about and you can just talk off the cuff. But ideally, if you're going to be presenting, you do want to do a bit of practice. Run it through, I would say, several times, so that you, like as Steve said, you probably don't want to have a script. And it sort of leads into this point which I threw up, like what tools are there? One of the things I come from, work for Telstra, say, Microsoft Shop, so we've got Teams. One of the things that you can do with Teams, if you've got it, is you can start a meeting just with yourself and record that. And that's a really good thing. I've gone through and done that. quite a few times actually when I'm doing presentations. So you record it, you run through, and it really gives you a good idea of like, what do you look like when you're giving a talk? Don't freak out, because the first time you watch yourself and listen to yourself giving that talk back, it's pretty freaky.
I've never actually watched myself, any of my presentations back, because I hate the sound of my own voice.
I've
Really,
done
really do.
hours and hours worth of video content. My own voice still cringes me.
Yeah, so like seriously, be prepared. Like, it's a really good way to do that if you can, record yourself giving that presentation. And I say, if you work for someone that uses Teams, like it's really easy to just like meet now, turn the record off, don't invite anyone else, it's just you, record it and then play it back. But yeah, you can
do the same thing in Zoom, and I think Google Meet now lets you do it. I
Yeah.
get used to.
Just as a corollary to that, I would suggest at least one of your practice runs should be in front of other people, because presenting to Teams or Zoom or anything like that is extremely different from presenting in front of people. It's a whole lot harder than presenting in front of people, because when you're looking at a video screen and you can't tell if people can hear you, you can't see their reactions, you don't know if what you're talking about is landing or not. Presenting in front of people is a whole lot easier. Practicing in front of people is a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
The other thing, if you are going to do the whole record yourself and watch back, because like, there is some value to that, particularly if it's your first or second time at doing it, minimize the window. Hit the record button, then minimize the window, because watching yourself present to yourself can be a little off-putting. And then you end up spending more time focusing on things that you really don't need to focus on, right? And your eyelid's only twitching because you're looking at your eyelid. So, yeah, just a...
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad if you got just have the screen up with your presentation and going through. So yeah, I mean, it definitely helps getting your speed through, working out how that sort of goes. But like, again, I think, as Steve alluded to, know your slides, have a good idea for what you want to say, but try not to script it, because when you get up in front of people, script goes out the window. So, especially if you haven't done it much, you'll get nervous, you'll go through faster, and so yeah, just get your points and practice going through that.
Matt's got a point?
Yep, just a small point. I haven't done many talks, but two key points that I've learnt. One, as you say, you don't memorise the talk, but if you practice, even 3 times, you'll know what you're going to say, because you can't. Once the slide's there, your brain goes into auto, so it just happens. And you think you can't memorise things, but it just happens, like, usually. And the second point is, practicing helps your flow. You think the flow is correct when you're doing your slides, but then when you practice, you'll realise, oh, hang on, we should swap them around.
Slide 4 and 5 need to be the other way around.
You don't want to do that on your meetup talk, so that helps. Everything might still not be perfect, and of course, the meetup doesn't have to be perfect, but it's never perfect, because you'll always change something after every talk. So that's my takeaway.
Yep, cool. So, what should you talk about? We sort of posed the ideas before around talk about something you're comfortable with, talk about something you've done, something you learnt, something you did at work, school, uni, free time, something you want people to know about, something you found interesting that you think others should know about.
Some cool tool you just found.
Yeah.
I love those talks.
Yeah.
I guess this is, again, I'm going to be a little bit experimental here. Out of curiosity, who here might, in some universe, be interested in giving a talk? Maybe-ish? Excellent. Somewhat. I'm going to pick on you for a moment, mate. I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Stephen. Stas, nice to meet you, mate. Excellent. So, there's a quick question. So, what is it you do for a living?
Platform engineer.
Platform engineer. Awesome. That's a really in-demand sort of thing. Do you have an idea for something you might want to talk about? I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, please commit to it, but just to get a bit of an idea of like a bit of brainstorming. So, any idea, or would it be just like, I have no clue as yet?
We're just thinking about doing some talks on how to spend less money by not using AWS services.
That's a good one. And again, this is a...
No, it absolutely is. It absolutely is.
That's a really good one. I guess...
We are not employed by AWS, so anything that helps us doing things with AWS, especially cheaper.
Spot on. And I guess as one quick more, like, as a little question to that, is there... like something in particular that's caught you like this would be the thing that would be really interesting? This is a real gotcha that I've seen out there.
Potentially, yeah.
Awesome. That's a great thing. And the thing is, many people from just your day jobs, you will have things that you have worked through, which are typically, in my experience, those things that you've banged your head against for 4 months. And it's just like, why won't this damn thing work? Why is this so hard? And probably there are people out there who've had the exact same situation. So there are things there within your job that you can dig into and find stuff. And I guess, I know we're running short on time. If you're finding that you'd like to dig into these things a little bit more, chat with any of the people who've been standing up and we can help you think of something and dig out a topic.
Yeah. So, like, if you want to get involved, let us know. If you want to do a talk, let us know. If you simply just want to spit out an idea, like bounce something off the wall with us, any of us are more than happy to chat to you in person, on Slack, email, like whatever works for you. Even if it's, as we said, you want to do the news or you want to come up and chair or whatever the case may be, we are more than open to it. Anything that will help people build their public speaking skills, get involved, anything like that, we're more than happy to help facilitate. Yep.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Great session. I just had a question. If I'm thinking of doing a talk, how much of a lead time do you guys need normally?
It's not about lead time. So basically, the way it works is anytime you want to give, that's actually a really good point. We didn't actually tell them. So on the website, on the AWS Melbourne User Group website, there is a form, submit a talk. You can go in there, you put in your name, a brief, description about what you want to talk about. Is it a level 100, level 200, level 300? That's more just so that we know how to frame it when we put it in the meetup.com. One of us will then reach out to you and basically go, yep, sweet, cool, not a problem. What do you need from us? When's it going to be ready? And we can slot it in. If we've already got something, sometimes we might have 6 presentations already in the works, so we're good for the next 2 or 3 months. Sometimes it's like 4 days before the event and we don't have any speakers. So in which point, if you send one through, we're going to get back to you really quickly and don't feel obligated. Like if we come to you and say, hey, wouldn't happen to be ready by Wednesday by any chance, would it? You can totally say no, right? Like the benefit is we've got a lot of people who do a lot of these. So we've usually all got like 1 or 2 spare presentations in our back pocket that we can pull out if we need to. So it's not like we'd be jammed up if nobody said yes. But at the same point in time, just slot it in, submit a talk. You can also do it through Slack. You can just message one of us and let us know that you've got an idea, and then we'll get back to you. It's more around what works for you more than what works for us.
Yep. Thanks.
And to that point, it's also a really good forcing function by the nature of saying, okay, I'll give a talk in 3 months' time, and then all of a sudden, as Matt said, you've then got a deadline.
That line in the sand.
Yep. And sometimes that won't pan out, and that's okay. But it also means you've got a couple of months to work on it, or if you're like me, you have a few months to not worry about it and then cram it in at the last minute because you decided you could do that.
Yeah.
Don't do what I do.
Yeah.
No, not without a lot of practice.
I guess, and as one, additional question, how many people here would be interested in, for example, that news reading section? Yes? A few people?
Yep.
There we go.
Awesome.
Sorry, lads, you're out of a job.
No, that's fine. That is good. That is great. Well, if that's the case, then the answer to that is join our Slack. Join our Slack community. What I'll do is we might put out a message in a week or two for call-outs for people who want to do it. We might pull together a little bit of a roster, a little bit of a plan, and we'll go from there. And I think the leadership team officially no longer solo the news segment. Yay!
Yay.
That's actually pretty exciting. On that note, because I do know that we're a little over time, do we want to do Marketplace quickly?
Yep, we'll just do that quickly. We won't. Do you have it on your
I think I
slide?
actually do.
If not, we'll just talk.
We do. Here we go. Open, and play.
Cool. All right, so the Marketplace. This has been fairly quick in the last several months, but is anyone hiring at the moment? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that at the moment.
Yeah, so it used to be we would have the recruiters from various places in here, and haven't seen any for a while.
Yeah.
All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for coming along. That was the end. We will say thank you again to our sponsors, Mantle Group, a gold sponsor, Sevo, a silver sponsor, NAB for the venue. If you have a look at the back, Steve is modelling the remaining food.
Please take it.
Please take it. Not only the food, but there are also quite often left over. There's utensils, bamboo chopsticks, and
some spare chopsticks.
Spare chopsticks.
Take a
help
drink.
yourself.
It's still a little warm outside. Otherwise, I've got to lug it all back to the car. So
The food is still good for lunch tomorrow.
Yep.
We know from experience.
Yeah, they do keep. You go home, put it in the
lunch.
fridge. They do form a good lunch. So feel free, take whatever's left, and we will see you on the 26th of March.
All right, thanks everyone.